Hey, welcome back. Today we're diving into something that sounds, well, totally counterintuitive. How did Donald Trump's America First strategy, the one that sent shockwaves through global alliances, somehow create a golden opportunity for India? It's a fascinating story about how a rising power can find order in chaos. So, let's break it down.
This quote from political scientist Rohan Mukherjee just hits the nail on the head. While so many of America's closest friends were, let's say, deeply concerned about all the disruption, another major power looked at the exact same chaotic world and saw a huge opening. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at how that chaos turned into opportunity for India. Then, we're going to hit rewind and see just how rocky the US-India relationship used to be. After that, we'll zoom in on the specific Trump effect. We'll unpack a really key idea called strategic autonomy. And finally, we'll ask the big question, is any of this actually built to last? All right, first up, chaos becomes opportunity. The whole idea here is that Trump's America First approach, which seriously rattled so many countries, weirdly ended up creating the perfect conditions for India to advance its own ambitions on the world stage. So why? What made India different? Well, it's because India has always been in this kind of unique spot. It's not a formal US ally with treaty commitments, but it's not an enemy either. That middle ground gave New Delhi a ton of flexibility to navigate the new landscape, way more than, say, Germany or Japan, who were locked into these decades-old alliances. But to really get how big a deal this is, we have to look back in time. Because the relationship between these two massive democracies, well, for a long time, it was anything but friendly. It was actually pretty rocky. Just look at this journey. Throughout the Cold War, you had deep suspicion, even hostility. I mean, as recently as 1998, the US slapped heavy sanctions on India for its nuclear tests. But then, slowly, things started to change. The real turning point, the absolute game changer, was that 2008 civil nuclear deal. It was a huge move that basically said, okay, we see you as a responsible nuclear power, rewarding India for breaking the old rules. And this wasn't just some diplomatic handshake. The trust led to real, tangible results. In the decade right after that nuclear deal, the US share of India's defense imports went from basically zero to 8.3%. That's not just a number, that is a massive strategic shift. And that brings us right to the heart of our story today, the Trump effect. How in the world did an administration that was so unpredictable create such clear strategic wins for India? When you list them out, it's pretty remarkable how neatly US policy started lining up with India's wish list. Washington got tough on India's main rival, Pakistan. It started calling India a leading global power. It pushed the whole Indo-Pacific strategy to counter China, which India loved. And it even gave India a very rare pass on sanctions for a key port project in Iran. I mean, each one of these was a major victory for New Delhi. But, and this is a really important but, this partnership is not a simple alliance. And to understand why, you have to get this one core concept that drives pretty much all of Indian foreign policy: strategic autonomy.
So, what the heck does strategic autonomy actually mean? It's not just about not picking sides, like in the old Cold War. For India today, it's about having the freedom to act, the freedom to chase its own great power dreams, and, this is the crucial part, to never, ever be the junior partner to anyone, not even the United States.
And right here, this is the fundamental tension in the relationship. Washington often looks at India and hopes for a close partner, kind of like Japan or Australia. But India sees itself very differently, as an equal, totally independent power that will always put its own interests first and will never sign a formal alliance. That mismatch creates a lot of friction. So let's just break down the give and take. For the US, the big wins are getting into India's massive market and having a democratic heavyweight to help balance China. The downside? Dealing with a tricky bureaucracy and a partner that insists on doing its own thing. For India, the benefits are huge, getting access to top-tier defense and nuclear tech, and being treated like a global power. The cost is having to make some compromises, like on its relationship with Iran. What's interesting is that so far, it seems the US has often been the one making the bigger adjustments. Okay, so where does this leave us? Is this future unstable? Can a partnership that basically thrived on one person's unpredictability really last? That is the high-stakes bet right now. And this is the real million-dollar question, isn't it? India was brilliant at turning the chaos of the first Trump term into an advantage. But what happens if that chaos dials up to 11 and stops being beneficial and just becomes a liability? This is where our second source comes in, and it paints a potentially different picture. The analysis suggests that a second Trump term might not be a simple repeat. Observers have noted a behavioral shift, more focused, more angry, and more interested in retribution. That's a very different political climate, and it raises serious questions about just how reliable of a partner the U.S. might be.
And this chart really drives that risk home. A survey of academic experts predicted that a second Trump term could cause the rating of U.S. democracy itself to fall sharply. And for a country like India, which needs to make long-term strategic plans, having a powerful partner that's seen as less stable and predictable, well, that makes everything incredibly difficult.
So, in the end, we're left with this massive question. Has India played its cards perfectly, turning global chaos into a strategic win? Or is this whole approach just a giant, high-stakes gamble on an unstable partner? A bet that could go spectacularly wrong. It's a question that's going to help shape the world for years to come.